Welcome back to today's episode. Today, we are going to be discussing climate. And when I talk about climate, I'm looking at climate change. So, our topic is Africa and climate change and what we really need to know for those of you out there. I believe many of you have had a lot of debates going around. Controversies, questions. Is climate change real or is it a fallacy? Are we experiencing climate change in Africa? And so this is going to be part of the conversations that we're going to be having with our guest. Today with me is Dr. Judy Omumbo. Welcome, Judy.
Thank you so much, Lillian. Thank you for the invitation. I'm really excited to talk about this topic today.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to our chat.
Okay, good. So before we get into the discussion, I would just like to remind all of you, our existing subscribers, our new subscribers, that this platform is one where we discuss science around health, climate change, as well as agriculture. And so if this is something that appeals to you, you're in the right place. For the new ones who come on and, listen and go and haven't subscribed, please subscribe on the links down below. So having said that, I'd like us to dive into our discussion, Judy. But before we start the discussion, I have a few, I would call them rapid fire fun questions. They have nothing to do with the science, right? And there will be just 3 of them. First one, if you're not a scientist, what would you be doing today?
That's a funny question. And often I reflect on it myself.
Yeah.
I remember from school days, what I remember most from school days is the creative part of school, the music, the drama, the singing, I don't actually sit in my life and think about mathematics or or physics or anything like that. And in my heart, I'm a very creative person. And I've always felt that that's what I'd like to do. I'd like to teach children to sing, to perform, to say poetry, that kind of thing, so that it remains as something that is a thing that people do. You mean life has to have something that makes it worth living. I tried to sell that to my father, who was very academic.
Yeah.
This organic chemist.
Yeah.
And up till now, I remember the confused look on his face,
Yeah.
serious concern. So that put paid to that ambition. So I think I would have gone into the performing arts, perhaps.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. What can you not start your day without? What's one thing that you can't start your day without?
I think really I'm an introvert, though it might not look so, that way. So I really love to wake up early when there's only birds and some quiet. 30 minutes of quiet where I'm just hearing the world wake up, nature rising for the day. And then, as a true Kenyan, I have to have my cup of tea.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So as we start, just for our audience, just tell us a bit about who Judy really is.
Judy, well, I ended up being a scientist anyway, but have discovered through being a scientist that there's a lot of creativity. The sort of science I enjoy is about discovery. What is new? What is really exciting? And what can we as a community people do about that and use science? I feel that as a mankind, discovery and innovation is hardwired in our DNA, right from the time first man discovered fire or built a wheel or learned how to cook. All of this is science, and really that's where I feel I am
At home.
at. That's where I feel most at home.
In today's discussions, we're going to be talking about Africa in global platforms of climate change and what we need to know regarding climate change, Africa as a continent, our role in these spaces. And before we get into that, many people still may not understand when we talk about climate change, what exactly is climate change? Can you very quickly define for us what that really is? If you're talking to your two little beautiful girls, what would you tell them you do in this space? How would you define climate change to them?
Indeed, my little girls have been really indoctrinated into climate change and that discussion.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to distinguish certain terms and to understand what's the difference between three main things.
Okay.
Weather. Weather talks about what's going to happen in the next week, tomorrow, there's going to be rain, what's normally reported in on TV, on the radio, so that you can plan for your day. Do I wear gumboots or do I put on my high shoes? And then we talk about climate. Climate is the average conditions of a place. We can talk of the highlands of Kenya being cool, and this is normally measured over data for 30 years or so.
Okay.
So that you get the average conditions of a place.
Okay.
Within that, the climate, things can change. Sometimes a hot season can be a little hotter than the other, but the seasonal cycle happens. Life is driven really by the seasonal cycle. As mankind, we've learned to live with the seasons. That's when we plant, that's when we go to school, that's when we decide when our holidays are going to be taken, and so on and so forth. So that's a very strong signal within climate. Then climate change are actual long-term shifts in the climate of an organization, so, of a climate of an area, geographical area.
Yeah.
So these are big shifts that see massive changes that are happening, particularly even in the seasonal cycle of things. We're seeing more extreme events, a lot more floods and landslides. We're seeing areas becoming much hotter than they used to be. You look at whole environments that have dried out, where drought has become a common thing. And yet there are people who remember, the grandparents, when this was a land of milk and honey.
Yeah.
So that's what it is, so climate change. The biggest signal of climate change at the moment is actually the heating of the planet.
Define how this looks like for Africa. Is it the same as what is happening to others, let's say in the Northern Hemisphere or the West, or what people commonly know as the developed world?
So that's a very important question. Where are we as a continent? So the planet is heating, for sure, but the heating is much faster and more pronounced in our region. Most of the heating, in fact, indeed, in this time, the heating of the planet is related to what we call anthropic issues, as in human beings, man-made heating. So it's around how we use fuels, fossil fuels, clearing forests, really things that Earth has put in place to protect us from heating. What it does, it produces certain gases that are called greenhouse gases, including carbon dioxide, that goes into the atmosphere, and then it forms, it's like a blanket around the Earth.
Okay.
So the heating comes underneath the blanket, and it makes it a lot hotter. The challenge for Africa is that it's heating faster in Africa than in other regions.
Why is that?
It's really about starting points and whether we have systems that are encouraging cooling, the removal of these greenhouse gases. In Africa, we're doing a lot of deforestation, a lot of removal of the green cover on the earth. Grasslands, for example, are so important. Bare ground produces a lot of heating. There's no chlorophyll. There's no the action of green plant and green life to remove carbon, remove greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. So that's why it's happening quite fast on our continent.
So I'm reading here, and I can see that there are several global platforms at which climate is discussed or climate change is discussed. And some of these are platforms like the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, commonly called the IPCC. There's a conference of parties called the COP, climate summits. Why are these platforms so important for us to know about? What happens?
Right. So Lillian, our continent, our whole world is one thing. So whatever happens in the north will impacts the South.
Affect us,
It's one
definitely.
atmosphere, it's one environment. And so there was a need. We first recognized really that we need to do something about it. And globally, the World Meteorological Organization and the United Nations Environmental Program got together to establish a platform, which was called the UN, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change,
Okay.
to make decisions on a global level on what we can do about this. So this was really the first serious effort to deal with the climate change crisis, the establishment of the UNFCCC. This was in around 1992, so you can imagine it's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And then countries were asked over the next year to sign up to that. And almost all the countries of the world have signed up to agree together that as a community of the world, we must do something together. Now, in order for that to work, they established the IPCC as the body that actually collects together the evidence. We are on echoes of evidence.
Yeah.
So the body that collects the evidence that's available on climate change, and they meet every year. The parties who have signed up, these are governments that have signed up, meet every year to look at that evidence and assess it and make decisions for their own regions. Because we cannot expect as Africans, for example, to have our decisions made by others who are not impacted in the same way.
Yeah, definitely.
And similarly, they are impacted in different ways in areas of development and society. So the Conference of Parties, which is the COP, happens every year. And countries are called to go to different regions of the world to discuss and present their perspectives on what to do within their regions. So it's also a platform where you give an update on your commitments. So between one COP and the next, all countries have said, we are going to do this much in adaptation or in mitigation, preventing the crisis.
First, take a pause. What is adaptation? What is mitigation? You're throwing around very heavy words.
I know.
Help
Always tell
the
myself.
audience. Help the audience know. When
Stop
we
being
talk
so
about
scientific.
adaptation, what exactly is it? When we talk about mitigation, what is this about? When we're talking about these issues of climate change.
Okay, mitigation is really the efforts that you do to prevent or to reduce the carbon footprint, which is really the amount of greenhouse gases that are going into the atmosphere.
Okay.
You know, for example, planting forests is a mitigation. Making sure that our seas remain green, you know, the mangroves are there, is a action of mitigation. Making sure that we are looking at biodiversity and allowing our plants and our grasses and our grasslands to grow is an effort of mitigation. And also, there are ways that we as human beings may burn fossil fuels. If we reduce those or we prioritize less dangerous use of uses of fossil fuels or reduce our use of fossil fuels, that's a mitigation. Okay. Then on the other side, there's adaptation. Adaptation are efforts we have to make sure that our communities are resilient. So you look at how better can we live in these conditions? You know, how can we build better housing, for example, in a heating world?
Okay.
So that we don't have people suffering from heat waves, dying from things like excessive heat.
Yeah.
There's huge tolls on things like maternal and neonatal health from heat. So those are all the all the adaptative actions that the globe is looking at.
Oh, okay. Okay. So looking at these platforms, you touched a little bit on the fact that when you get there, countries present what they've been doing. Are you able to share with us some of the key issues that are discussed during these platforms, beside accountability of what have you done over the year to either adapt or mitigate?
So I can speak from the Africa side because I think for me that is my real passion.
Yeah.
And just to say that over the past 30 years or so, there's been a huge paradigm shift in the ownership of the agenda for climate. we've all heard this narrative of, oh, we are the least polluters, and yet we are the ones impacted the most. And, I sort of feel that it's true that we're the most vulnerable and so on and so forth. But it means, I feel that as a population, we are shooting ourselves in the foot by sounding like we don't have a say in what is going on.
Okay.
There's nothing that we can do. But there are groups who are doing a lot of things. Those platforms that we've talked about, the COP, the IPCC, and so on, we as a continent can contribute those, and not just see it as an area for science. Because when it comes to adaptive actions or even mitigative actions, it's who implements them. It's communities.
People at the grassroots.
Yes, exactly. People at the grassroots, We can rethink about how we use waste or how we control plastics and so on, the things that are really damaging to the environment. So there has been a lot in terms of African governments putting together teams of negotiators. Yeah. We have Agnes, which is the African Group of Negotiators, the expert support group for that, who sit down and look at the data from Africa and say, this is where we're at. These are going to be our priorities for our continent. So when we say that we haven't developed and climate change and the rules for climate change are disadvantaging Africa because everybody's saying, do not use fossil fuels and so on. We can come with that discussion from a point of having evidence that, we still have some room to look at how we can develop, not compromise our development because of the climate change crisis. So that's really where that table allows us to say, this is what we want to do, and we can make commitments on our contributions to the climate change agenda.
So as a climate change enthusiast and researcher, what would be your number one priority issue that you would like people to know about regarding this broad topic?
You mean as societies, really?
Yeah,
or is
generally
it more at the
people, because
policy level?
like you've just said, a lot of people are grappling with questions around greenhouse gases, greenhouse emissions, issues around even carbon credits, carbon markets. So there's a lot that's happening, and in the policy spaces, the financing spaces that people may not have information about, and many of them could be out there grappling with answers to some of these issues. And when you don't provide the answers, then people start filling in the gaps themselves. So as somebody in this space, what for you would be some of the key issues you would like for our audience out there who are listening and have the same questions that we've kept getting around some of these issues?
I think the big thing really is that, as a society, we need to make climate change a thing, a priority, mainstreaming it really in our own lives. So there are two sides: what society needs to, how society needs to respond, and then also at the policy level. So I think at the policy level, supporting efforts in government from our sector, for example, the scientists, supporting the policies of government by making sure that we see that they're implemented. We make sure that we've evaluated them. We've been able to support government in saying what is working well, what is a good idea from the global discussion. Keeping informed really gives you a much stronger platform to do something about some of the things that are coming our way. So that would be the first one. And really thinking about integrated planning. This is not just the sector for environment or the sector for health. It happens, it's through all sectors, because anything that impacts the lives of people who are the center for development needs to come into this climate change agenda with a discussion that happens across all the sectors. And then, globally, there's a lot around, you mentioned carbon credits and carbon market. Africa has a strong advantage that we haven't polluted already. And if you look around the world, no country is actually chosen initially
Yeah.
a sustainable pathway.
Yeah.
Where we are, we can become the leaders to show the world or to test for the world how a sustainable pathway can be developed.
Okay.
So
Can you
there's,
explain a little more
grab
about?
that.
Yeah.
Well, most countries have developed on a very strong fossil fuel
Yeah.
development trajectory. In our country, for example, we don't use that much fossil fuels. It's mostly for petroleum, in our cars. That is our use of fossil fuel.
Maybe if you
But our
can.
electricity comes from water. It's hydroelectric power.
Okay.
It's geothermal power.
Yeah.
And that doesn't produce the greenhouse gases.
That's what I was going to ask you. When you talk about fossil fuels, would you just give us a bit of what does this entail? What are they when we talk about fossil fuels? What do those include?
So fuels, the power of fuels comes actually from burning.
Yeah.
So if you're using petrol, you're burning.
Mm.
And it's burning organic matter.
Okay.
So if it comes from coal or it comes from the ground, petrol comes from the ground, it's organic. And then you burn it, then you have the
The
carbon,
fuels.
you have the greenhouse gases going into the
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So if you have power that's running turbines on the power of wind or of water, these are just natural processes that are being used to run turbines and produce energy. Because the world runs around, it's energy and food are the two things that are, the big things for mankind's survival. So that's what you're really focusing on using a very heavy fossil fuel development pathway means that it's not sustainable. After all, what you take out of the ground, if you don't put it back in, it's extractive.
Yeah.
Our planet has finite resources. Our population is growing massively. In Africa, that is always the big thing. Oh, Africa is growing so big, and in a few years,
Population.
every 1 in 4 people will be from Africa.
Yeah.
That is a statistic that is everywhere. So, with the growth of the population, the continued removal of resources from the earth
ground
that gives us life, eventually there will be no
will
more
deplete
resources.
it.
There will be resources. So, this is a serious concern.
I'm looking at some statistics here, and you'll allow me to read. My head cannot take in everything. Fossil fuels contribute nearly 90% of carbon dioxide, right? And there is a shift to move more to the green energy sources to cut on these emissions. So how does this then translate to Africa, where, for the most part, of course, we are still very reliant on fossil fuels? So, how do we strike that balance of getting our people out of poverty when we're still relying on fossil fuels, at the same time, transitioning into clean energy, where the world is currently driving?
So it's not easy, I think there is a need for a huge paradigm shift in the way that we think, you know. There has to be some innovations.
Yeah.
We need to have an environment where innovations are supported so that people can learn other ways. Most of our populations live in rural areas.
Yeah.
They're off the grid already from electricity. The only way that they can heat their food or cook is by burning trees, burning wood, using charcoal, So we need solutions for people who are off the grid that work well. This has been a very difficult, place to work because when you talk about windmills, for example, they're very expensive. They're not produced locally. They need to be brought in and they require quite a lot of maintenance. This is where we have challenges. Good fuel that's produced from for example, wind fuel. There's this or solar. One would think this is
Solar.
great. It's so expensive to
Solar
set
is
up.
quite
It's
expensive
very
when you look at,
expensive.
because when you look at rural electrification, for instance,
Mm.
and people want to get off grid, they call it off grid.
Yes.
you're using solar. It's still so out of reach, and yet Africa is where sun exists.
We have the power. We have this, the solar radiation.
So people
But
wonder
it's difficult.
why should we struggle, for instance, to transition to such clean energy or forms of energy, for instance, when it comes to things like solar. How are you able to move countries towards that direction when things are still out of reach in terms of the financing of some of these technologies?
So, energy is a human right in my mind. It's a human right. Without energy, you cannot live. It drives everything. It's almost like money.
Yeah.
And there are ways, there are challenges already with these systems. You can't, when we use solar on cold days, that's it, it goes. It's a kind of energy that you can't store. So there are ways that there could be real incentives for a government, for example, to force innovators to build systems locally. If these are produced locally, then the price goes down. And also to innovate to improve them. So solar panels are huge. If you have a small hut and you have to put one solar panel
It
there,
will collapse.
and then it collapses, no one is available to come and maintain. So it requires a whole system that's thinking about the enterprise of energy. We need people who will work as technicians, people who will provide support, because as a people, once somebody is given a tool, they will find out ways to make good use of it. And if you think about cell phones, nobody had to teach a rural person as a program what to do with their cell phone. And they have innovated with the cell phones, but they made sure that with less than 3,000 shillings, everyone can have a cell phone. And that has revolutionized the whole communications industry. We don't talk about it anymore. When I was young, making a phone call, an international call, you'd have to go to the post office, the Citibank, at the central bank, and with coins. But the world has changed, and I think similarly with energy, if people are allowed to innovate and look at how to produce batteries that are not so huge to store energy from clean sources, then there would be an environment where we can build our own kind of energy sources. But if we continue to rely on importing things that come with very high taxes, that's why those panels are that expensive. It's the taxes, and there are no incentives. You don't get tax breaks if you're running a rural electrification project using solar, for example. Then these things will not grow. So if we can see it more as this is for the benefit of our nation, if people can work and they can feed themselves, it takes them off the responsibility of having to be looked after by government, which is very expensive. It also removes their need for healthcare for things that they could manage themselves. It also gives jobs. It gives jobs to people. And it also reduces that need for people to move always to the city looking for a place where they can plug their cell phone.
Charging, even just moving to neighbors to charge phones.
I think so, yes.
So when we look at Africa's role, going back to some of the platforms on climate change, global platforms, regional platforms, what do you see as the role of, let's say, our researchers, some of the policy makers, or people who lead policy like Agnes in leading, not just playing, but leading some of these conversations that happen, because these are really key decision-making organs. And if Africa's voice is not centered, then some of these things could fall, through the cracks. So beside playing a role, being at these meetings and conferences and participating in discussions, what are some of the ways that you see our people have actually led conversations in these spaces?
So I've been to several conference of party meetings, convenings, and the thing that really strikes me often is that as a continent, we come as a country and another country and another country. Some countries are stronger than others, but there isn't a really good unifying across the continent and the
So we don't have
collaboration.
one African
A
voice. We
strong
don't
one
go as
African voice.
Africa.
We don't go as Africa.
So
Because
when we
I feel that outside Africa, we're
yeah
considered as Africa. But inside Africa, we consider ourselves as this is the position of Kenya, this is the
countries
position of another country, and it doesn't give us the kind of strength
we
that
need.
other regions will have because they are probably talking in a more unified voice about things. I mean, there are policy frameworks that we need to be thinking of as a continent. You know, this is where we see the priorities are, and to be speaking together between the COP before that happens, preparing for those together. And it's not even just country to country, even internally within country. Scientists are talking by themselves. Those who are negotiating are representing the government. There's a challenge on how to even work with the government. You know, many countries don't have an office for science in government. You know, we always feel that you've developed a nice paper, you've developed a policy brief, you've placed it on somebody's table, and something will happen. But there's a whole framework in which decisions are made, you know, because they can't just make only a priority for the COP.
Yeah.
You know, government is looking at other things as well. So can we have proper negotiations, proper interactions and collaborations so that when we speak, it is a strong voice? The COP itself it's an amazing place. It's really exciting the first time you go. But huge things with many, many people's demonstrations and different zones. You know, if you're in the blue zone, that's where you hear the real positions of government.
Okay.
And if you've been lucky enough to go there, what happens is the big nations will go in, they have a roundtable discussion in the final thing. And often our continent sometimes gets left out of that because it can't be the voice of one country in the continent.
So
You
what
see how much stronger we could be if we do have, you know, the COP should be, oh, the Africans are coming.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. But why then do we not? Okay, if having this as one continent could be a challenge, because you know we are so diverse. What stops us from engaging as regions? Let's say, is that even a possibility as regions? And what would it take to then move as a continent? I'm just wondering, what would it take us for us to move as a continent, and what is stopping us?
I don't know. You know, sometimes I think we should just go back to the beginning. When
Yeah.
we talk about regions,
Yeah.
whose regions are those?
Who created these
Who
regions?
created those regions?
That's a good question.
Who created those regions? And are these geographic regions the reason why we live? Are these the reasons why we congregate? Or is it around common issues?
Okay.
There's a lot of commonality
Yeah.
about Africa, you know, even in the way that we are viewed,
Yeah.
you know, across the world. So can we just go back to that? You know, sometimes when you talk about diseases, emerging issues for diseases, for example, they don't care about those boundaries. You know, we've learned a lot from the COVID pandemic, for example. It didn't care where you came from.
Yeah.
But when there were impacts and decisions and global table discussions, Africa was one. The decisions for Africa were made as one. So the decisions for Africa can be made in a positive way, but it also can mean that we're left out. So we need to be able to put those boundaries aside. So regional, yes, because our decision-making bodies, we have regional blocks.
Yeah.
So for the actual decisions, but scientifically, you know, we need to see ourselves as one continent. It doesn't stop us from using those regional boundaries because then it's easier to make it on the policy side. Our government can't make a decision for literally, you know, the people who are the same as you right across the border is not that easy. So to really just look at those boundaries and use them to their advantage, and rather as the ones that say, this is how we are impacted as a climate. I mean, as a continent. Yeah. I mean, there are many things about the financing, for example, sharing that cake. You know, we hold most of the carbon credits of the world. You know.
Can you explain a bit more about what this means? When you say we hold most of the carbon credits of the world, what does that mean?
So
What does that look like?
yes, so a credit would be like it is the value of 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide, the equivalent of that.
Okay.
So you can measure how much is saved by forests or how much is saved by the oceans. You know, the oceans really take in a lot of the carbon because of the green life within the, the phytoplankton in the ocean. Many of these oceans are around Africa. So it is a really good site for marketing carbon credits. So, for example, if a country like China, the USA, that are producing a lot of a heavy carbon footprint, need to develop or are developing, are using a lot of carbon, are putting a lot of carbon, of greenhouse gases in the environment, they can come and say to Kenya that we need this much amount of carbon credit and we exchange. So this is what the carbon markets are about. Yes, the ocean is the ocean is considered a carbon sink. A carbon sink is anything that is, a natural environment, for example, that puts that takes in more carbon dioxide than it puts into the atmosphere. So, plant life requires carbon dioxide for photosynthesis for the life of the plants. So the more plant life you have, the better it is, and that's considered a carbon sink. The oceans are a carbon sink, for example.
Let me ask, if we provide these carbon credits, right, would it in one way motivate the more developed nations to reduce their emissions if they have somewhere where these the where they can bank on these fuels being sunk into? Would it? I don't know if I'm using the right the right terminology, but let's assume there's this ocean, and the US, or the other countries come in and say, we would like to get some credits from you. Would that exchange motivate them to start emitting less, or would it be a motivator to emit more?
So I think these it's a moral obligation. It's a
Okay.
really moral obligation, and I think it's policed in a sense
Okay.
by the global bodies that we talked about. Every country has to, at the COP, deliver on commitments on their what they're called NDCs, your nationally determined contributions towards mitigation. As I mentioned, what are you doing to reduce that carbon footprint? So if you're doing a lot of fossil fuel work, you need to invest a lot into the research on how to remove the impacts of the industrialization that you're working on. And you commit to say, we as a country have said we're going to reduce by this much, and the next COP, you're held accountable for it. Similarly, countries that are not producing, you need to say, how much are you doing to make sure that you're not on the path to producing? Okay. So it's not just, we will we'll continue polluting while others, we can buy credits from these other countries. So countries have also had to commit to make sure that they're greening the environments and where they're getting, where they're marketing from. So they pay for biodiversity, for conservation. Our government, for example, might receive enough money for projects to support projects that are greening our environment, that are looking at our oceans. The whole discussion about the blue economy, that's within the oceans. And African countries are already doing that. Where African countries are attending the COP and delivering on their nationally determined contributions. And every country has a plan for adaptation. It's called a NAP, National Adaptation Plan. So it is written, and we can see who's going where and who's doing what. Yes.
If we're to look at Africa, Are you able to envision how we can transition from fossil fuels, how we can develop, without fossil fuels? Are you able to envision that happening? How will we, or how will we leapfrog? I would say leapfrogging, because we would need to catch up with our counterparts in the West who have now moved into things like, nuclear energy, and we're still running on things like petroleum. How do you envision this happening, for instance?
So it has to be a global solution. It has to
Yeah.
be a global solution. I think we are doing well. We're doing very well as a country,
Okay.
looking at geothermal energy
And as a
with
continent?
hydroelectric power and so on. Leapfrogging means you know that this person went on this path, it didn't work. So you don't just follow that path.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's, around the policies, what are we doing to make sure that we are also engaging around that discussion on nuclear energy? How can we build it so that it's not as scary?
Yeah.
It's time for us as a society not to be so afraid of science.
Yeah.
Because I think there's always an attack of science these days.
Yeah.
Whatever has been developed in the north
Yeah.
they're coming for us.
Yes.
It's against us.
It's a lot out there.
Yes.
By the way, it's a lot out there, and these are issues people are grappling with in real life.
Right. That's so true.
So as a person in this space, and as somebody who is so passionate about these issues, what would you like to tell the audience out there in terms of these issues? Couple of, let's say, give and take 2-3 issues that
Key
you'd like
points.
people in the audience out there to know. The conspiracies that are out there. Oh, they don't want us to develop. Why are they telling us to stop using what we have? Yet that's where they started from. Now they've transitioned and are asking us not to. These are real issues that people are grappling with. So some of these issues, what would you like to say to our audience that's listening?
So first of all, I'd like to say that, I'm a very optimistic
Yeah.
person, and I think be informed.
Yeah.
As scientists, we need to give proper information.
That's true.
If we look at our whole information economy on our continent, there isn't much transformative information. But whose responsibility is that? We need to make sure this discussion, for example, talk to people. This is what it's about, and then just go and read about things and get a good perspective. And not to really give up. There's a role for us as a people to look at the fossil fuel. A lot of our fossil fuels are coming because we burn things. If we look at how we manage our agriculture, it comes from the fields. The cutoffs for that are burnt. They don't go back into the ground. We put them in a pile. We burn them.
Don't we
Our
all?
rubbish.
Don't many of us do that though?
Yeah, of course. Of course, very educated people.
Yes.
Here am I feeling very educated, and yet my neighbors, they trim their gardens, they burn everything.
Yes.
They buy there's a lot of plastic
Yes.
in our main supermarkets. It's all plastic.
Yeah.
We don't have a culture of repurposing, recycling, getting rid of things. These are things that we can do as people. Every inch matters. I have 4 cars in my home. This is not my situation.
I was going
So
to
Johnny
wonder.
goes out with one car, Onyango goes with another car, and Shiko takes her own car as well.
Yeah.
And they're all heading in the same direction because they want to come back at different times.
Yeah.
Think again about that. Think again when you want to use your water resource, you want to use earth resources. Ovyo, as we say in Kenya.
Yeah.
We all have a role, and whatever you do makes a difference. I have, now just recycle 100%. And I've learned from recycling, and then also all organic products goes back into the ground. I make manure. I'm an avid gardener. I love plants. I love flowers, as you know.
Yeah, you do.
It all goes back into the ground and creates manure that you can feed into your plants. November is beautifully glorious in Nairobi. That's when all the flowers are coming out. And you can do something like that. Make sure that we're putting back into the earth as much as we can. And after recycling, my bag of trash that goes has reduced from 7 bags to 1.
Oh.
to 1.
Mm-hmm.
So there are just some things that you can't, like food product cutoffs
Yeah.
and so on.
Yeah.
But if it's organic, it has another purpose.
Yeah.
Let's look at how we can do that.
Mm.
So don't give up. Don't feel like, we're doomed and Africa is most affected. Let us do our part.
So your parting shots, like I said, we're discussing Africa in global platforms on climate change and what we need to know. What would be your parting shots regarding these platforms? Are they for us or are they not for us as a continent? And how can we leverage them to ensure that one, we get our populations, our communities across the continent to appreciate what happens during conversations that happen there, but also for them to realize that the discussions that happen here have to eventually cascade to communities. And we need communities to be prepared. We need the general public to be prepared. We need our policymakers to be prepared, but also our scientists. If I can just say now, if you listen to me, I'm talking about how many groups. So global platforms, are they for us or they are not for us as a continent? How can we leverage them, whether we're looking at our researchers or our scientists, if we're looking at our policymakers, and then the communities or the ordinary person?
So I think
That's too much. Huh?
anything. No, it's not too much. I think it's an important question.
Yeah.
Anything that's decided by
Yeah.
government
Yeah.
is for who?
For us.
So therefore, those platforms are definitely for us.
Yeah.
So we need to engage with them. I'm so excited by the younger generation, because simply because they read and they listen.
You mean we don't read
What are
our
they-
generation?
That's another discussion. That's
Yeah.
another echo of evidence,
Yeah.
really. Really to say, look, this is how it impacts us,
Yeah.
to care about the future. I think our generation is, it's happening now and is, perhaps the future is too is too far away for us. But there are those who do worry about what they're going to do when this is all depleted and so on. So to be inquisitive about how does that impact me? All global frameworks, we talk of the sustainable development goals that were decided for us. And so, our agenda is very much around alleviating poverty. We don't have any priorities for innovations because we agreed to that. So if we don't have it as a priority for government, we're not going to build this. And it's for us to say, look, we are ready to take on this task ourselves and do something. So engage with those things. Do what you can. The things that move the government really are not a scientist saying that or the other. I mean, you and I have been in science for a long time. It's really interest groups in the population who say this means a lot for my people where I am. Government, can you do something about it?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So it is our role. The ownership is the people. Who appoints those governments? Who appoints these bodies? It is you and I.
Yeah.
So can we do it from a point of being informed?
Yeah. So I would like to have one last question for you. This is not about climate change.
Oh dear.
What would you change? What is one thing you would change in the space where you are? What is one thing that you would like to change in the space that you work in?
One thing.
Yeah.
Having been in the science space almost all my working life, really, it's still seen very much as this is the geek. And it's not for anybody. And I think even in the education system, you're chosen. You're chosen in an early stage. If you're good at mathematics, this one is good at maths, so therefore they'll take this thing. I feel that really demystifying science, engaging other people. Now, finally, the science community is looking to real impacted communities to find solutions. It is the communities who have always found solutions. And that's where we started at the beginning.
Yeah.
That's where science began.
Yes.
You know, this is what is affecting me. I need to travel fast quickly. Let me make a wheel. It's not necessarily the person who got the highest mark in maths, but our education system is very much about those grades and how it selects you to go and do a different field. Can we open this? Can we really just open science so that it is recognized for what it is? Everything that we do
It's
has a
about
science base.
science.
Yes. If you're innovating, if you're creating music,
Yeah.
is about science.
Yeah.
Designing a drum
Yeah.
is science.
Yeah.
So that's what I would really
Change.
I wish that would change.
Okay.
Yes.
So thank you very much. And thank you, Judy, for spending these few minutes with us. We would like to come to the end of this conversation. For the audience out there, I think the issue is that climate change is here. We need to mitigate for it, or we need to adapt. And it's not something that is abstract. We need to do the basics that we live with every day. Are we burning garbage in our backyards? Do we consider it as a meeting? I don't think we do. I don't think we do. Many people just assume they're just burning garbage. But things as basic as that is what we need to start thinking about and getting to participate in conversations around climate change and how we can be able to become resilient because it is here. It is not a far-fetched concept. So let's work together. Let's join the likes of Judy, who are so passionate when they come to talk about such topics or in their work, to make our small contribution in our own small way in order to have a healthier world, a healthier earth. So, and until next time, stay well and do not forget to join us in the socials below. Subscribe, like, and share. We look forward to seeing you again